Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 160 of the Laravel News Podcast. Thanks so much for hanging out with us again. I've got with me, as always, the man in the Lakers hat with a brand new camera and lens looking so purty on that f-stop 1.4.
Crisp.
Mr. Michael Dorinda.
Looking good.
Crisp, indeed.
I've been wanting to do
How's
this.
it going, man?
Good. Been wanting to do this for ages, and the camera came up and the lens came up on Gumtree, which is like your Craigslist. I don't know if you've got Gumtree over there. Maybe you do.
Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, they just both became available this week, so I snapped them up, and here we are, looking pretty.
Nice. It looks beautiful. Looks beautiful. And I don't use Gumtree here, but there is like a bunch of other ones. So Craigslist, yes, but Facebook Marketplace I think is taken over as the listing place of choice. It's the only reason I still have Facebook on my phone.
Yeah.
It's because I use Facebook Marketplace sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I got the
good
camera.
times. Good times.
Got the camera off of Gumtree, and I got the lens from Marketplace, so worked out well.
And you got a pretty good deal. I think you paid half of what retail is for both everything, right?
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, so that was secondhand, but the lens, the guy basically never used it that I bought it from, and the camera was like an older guy. So yeah, it was all well looked after.
And didn't you say that when you told your wife how much you spent on a webcam, she was like, "What the?"
Well, she's
right?
like, "You spent
and then
how
you
much
took
on
and then
a
you took a
webcam?"
picture with it.
Yeah, I took
Yeah,
one
and then you
photo
took a picture
of
with it.
of our daughter, and she was like, "I'm going to take that camera, and you're never going to see it again."
And never
She
give it
was
back.
just happy.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
how it came out, and it was not
Every
like,
time you're gonna.
I didn't frame the photo. I was holding Liv, and so I
Right,
just put the camera around in front of me, and like trying to take a selfie with this
Snapped a
with
selfie,
this giant
right?
lens on there, and she just pulled the best face at the right time, and
Yeah. It's hard to take a bad photo with a good camera, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, hey, why don't we go ahead and jump in and get started? Before we get started too much here, we want to give a quick shout out to Honey Badger with their amazing new product called Hook Relay, which we're going to be talking a little bit more about later in the show. Hook Relay is a way for you to implement webhooks in a really easy and effective way for your Laravel apps, for other applications, for other frameworks as well. But of course, we're talking about Laravel today. So for Laravel, it is. So thanks, Honey Badger, for sponsoring the show. Hey, let's get into releases then. Mr. Dorinda, you want to jump into Laravel 8.81?
let's do it. Laravel 8.81 came out the week of January 26th. With a string scan method, the ability to disable caching in attribute accesses, and a get or put collection method, and more. So starting off here with the stringable scan method, Amir Rami contributed a scan method to stringable implemented using PHP's scanf function. So you can do assertions against things to make sure that you can find partial things. So you can say, for example, assert 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in a stringable of SN. So you can look for basically substrings. Let's look this up, but I'm pretty sure scan is a substring. Parses input from a string according to a format. So if you know that, sorry, not a substring.
This
so
is a weird one.
That,
yeah, have you?
Yeah, I've never heard of this function, never used it before, but it's useful. Short of doing like a regex across a string. If you know that a string is always going to be in the format SN : 5 numbers or whatever, then you can use this rather than using regular expressions or using using string matching or using explodes or anything like that. So
right.
Apparently we're having some recording issues.
It's just
here,
like,
so let me just.
Yeah, it's just like the. It looks like just like the internet stuff. Fast.com is your friend.
Fast.com. Oop, not Fastmail. See what's happening here. Running the test. Well, the down is okay. How's my up looking?
Oh yeah, I was running. I should have tested my up as well. I was just looking at my down.
Using dodgy Wi-Fi. I bet you that's what it is. Dodgy Wi-Fi.
Oh yeah. Oh well. It's back now. So I think you're good.
I'm gonna blame you. My down and up are both fine.
Okay. That's fine. That works for me too. Yeah. Nobody's streaming anything
Skype's
right now, but hey,
anyway.
it could. Yeah, could happen. Hey, but this scanf thing is really interesting. Like, I've never actually looked at this. Have you ever used this before?
Never used it. It looks like it's kind of like the inverse of a printf, where printf you
right,
can use
printf,
%s, %d, or whatever to put placeholder strings into, so you can have like a an input with, where you're placing a string, rather than doing
Yeah.
string interpolation, you can use printf. This
Sure.
looks like the kind of inverse of that. So you can say, like, instead of looking
Exactly.
for a pattern or using a regex or something like that, you can just say like sn scan %d, and then it will make sure that value appears in there. So as always, not doing this justice, but definitely check out the show notes. We'll have
It's
links
really cool.
to examples in there. It might simplify some of your test assertions, so definitely check it out. Next up, Declan Norton contributed the ability to disable caching for attributes being accessed via the new attribute class, which was introduced a couple of point releases ago. You can use the new API in a few ways. You can either return inside of your model accessor, return attribute : get without caching, or you could say attribute : get pass your value there, and then chain on disable object caching. And an explanation of the use case from the pull request description: I often find myself adding virtual accessors to construct objects based on other attributes within the model, most commonly datetime instances. Currently, the result of an accessor is cached if it's an object, and only invalidated if the attribute's mutator is called. Scalar types are unaffected. So if you're needing to make manipulations to those things, or if you don't want, you explicitly don't want these values to be cached for whatever reason, definitely check that out. And lastly, in this release, Lito, EU Son Lito, has added the get or put method to collections, which simplifies the use case where you either want to get an existing key or put the value if it doesn't exist and return the value. So previously you might have to do a collection has, and if that returns false, then you can put a new value into the collection, and then you can get that. With the get or put, you can either get or put a value or pass a callable to do some kind of resolution logic, and that will check to see if it exists. If it doesn't, it will place it into the collection and then return that new value straight away for you. So that's something that you had to do. Again, another one of those streamlining quality of life features that you can check out. So we'll have links to all of that, Laravel 8.81, in the show notes.
Very nice. We've got 8.82 as well. The first thing that we have is cross-join sequences in factories. So if you have not yet used these before, not a problem, but in your factories, there is an ability now to have something called a sequence. And the sequence will essentially allow you to specify multiple values manually that you can have your factory iterate through as it creates them. So you might, for example, say that you want to have a different like permission levels. Like you could have user, editor, admin, right? Maybe you'd have those three. You just kind of want to cycle through those: user, manager, admin, user, editor, admin, whatever you might have. Well, if you wanted to do this multiple times with different values, you would previously have to call those sequences manually multiple times. So now what we have is this ability to have you can join these multiple factory sequences with these matrices. It's called a matrix sequence. So when you call state, you can say new matrix sequence, and then you can define values in a man. This is going to be another one of those things where it's like hard to explain it. Yeah, it's a multi-dimensional array, right?
It essentially allows you to transpose all of the values onto each other.
Sure. So in this case, we have a first name of Thomas and a first name of Agent, and then we have a last name of Anderson and a last name of Smith. And so what it'll do is use that first name with each of the last names. So it'll do first name, first name, second last name, and then it'll switch over to second first name, first last name, second first name, second last name. So it basically will make sure that each of those values gets used with each of the others from this matrix sequence. But whereas previously you'd have to call it multiple times, now you can do that in just one big matrix. So that's pretty handy, I suppose. I've not used even sequences yet, so maybe someday I will. But there we go. We've also got this transliterate string helper. So Liam Hackett contributed a string transliterate method, which will take a string and transliterate that string to its closest ASCII representation. So, you have some of these characters that might have like a
accent.
What's like an accent mark? Thank you. Yeah, an accent mark. And if you don't want to have that, if you just want to get the closest ASCII representation of it, you could pass that string to the transliterate method, and then it would just replace that with a very default ASCII character. So like if you had an A with a tilde over it or whatever it is, not a tilde, but an accent mark over it, it would just return A. So if you've had problems previously, maybe in your database storing those, if you're trying to do some sort of string matching and you're not accounting for those other characters, using this string transliterate might help you out there. We've also got a required array keys validation rule that was contributed by Andrew R. Scott. And so what this does is it will allow you to specify what keys should exist on an array that is being passed in to your request. So if you have an array value that's coming in and you want to make sure that it contains the keys of foo and bar, you can now do that. So you use the rule required array keys, specify the keys that should exist, foo and bar, and then if they don't contain those, it'll say the whatever field must contain entries for foo and bar, or just the one that's missing. So you can see the complete list of new features and updates on GitHub, of course, for between 8.81 and 8.82. Okay, we've got some exciting news as well. If you didn't get to see the trailer yet, you should definitely take a look. Michael, what do we got?
Yeah, Laravel Origins is a brand new documentary on the history of Laravel and how it went from nothing to one of the leading frameworks of the world. We've got the trailer, which we'll include in the show notes for you to check out if you haven't seen it already. It did do the rounds. I think every member of the Laravel team and everyone associated did the retweet thing. It features Taylor Otwell and many others who've contributed to making Laravel the technology and community that it is today. Jeffrey Way popped up. Dale Reese popped up. If you've been in there in the Laravel community for a long time, he was one of the OG teachers of the framework.
Yes.
Matt's in there, Fox. Adam's in there, despite having abandoned PHP and gone off to play with this little CSS framework, and a whole bunch of others. And I'm aware that there's a whole host of other people that are not in the trailer as well that have been interviewed after the trailer came out. So the online premiere of the documentary itself will be on the 2nd of March. You can watch #Laravel Origins as soon as it goes live alongside the cast of the documentary and other artisans, plus an AMA with Taylor and a Laravel after party. There is, I think, a limited number of seats. They're doing that. It's like a virtual, like a metaverse. I loathe to use the term, but one of those online meeting things where there's like animated characters and you can run around and things like that. So Laravel Origins was filmed at the end of last year, produced by OfferZen and directed by DeWald Brand, with shoots in the US, Canada, the UK, Australia, Portugal, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Austria, and Egypt. So they have done the rounds. They have spoken to a lot of people in the community. I'm excited to check it out. It'll be like a 30-40 minute documentary as far as I'm aware.
Wait. Hold on. They came all the way to Australia and didn't interview the guy who did Laracon Australia. Am I hearing that correct?
I don't know. I don't recall being interviewed, but that's okay. There's
Michael. What is happening in this world right now? Unless
you
know what, I think you're just going to make a.
They didn't actually travel here. They because they can't. We don't let people into our country at the moment. So they've outsourced some of the recording process, as far as I'm aware. So yeah, no, I wasn't interviewed, but that's okay. I think I've had my time in the limelight, in the community. So there are other people that are well positioned and very well deserving of the voice.
Absolutely.
That they get in the documentary.
I mean, like it would be impossible to get all the people who deserved to be in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's be honest. Yep, very exciting. I reserved my ticket already, so I will be metaversing it up, as you called it. I don't know if I get to create a little like avatar character, then I'm gonna be pretty stoked about that. That'd be kind of
cool. Small things.
I have to get a go out and get an Oculus and join in the fun. Okay. Next up, we've got PHP Monitor 5.0 for Mac OS. I have been using this for a while now. Nico Verbruggen is the guy who created this. So PHP Monitor is the lightweight native Mac app to manage PHP and Laravel Valet. And he just released version 5.0. So what I use this for typically is I use this for switching between versions of PHP. Mm-hmm. So if I am on a project that requires 7.4, I have 7.4, 8.0, and 8.1 installed on my local machine. I can just go up to my toolbar, click 7.4. It switches the PHP everything. Version, restarts my Valet. Yep, exactly. Links everything up, restarts restarts Nginx, restarts everything, and then it tells me, hey, you're good to go. All set for 7.4. So then I can do my composer install and test that project locally using Valet rather than having to set up, a Docker container or anything like that. It works really, really well. So version 5.0 comes with an improved domains window, global composer update, fix my Valet, service indicator, PHP info per site, and more. So now you can do PHP version per site. So you can say this site in particular uses this version of PHP. So when you're trying to host it or you're trying to serve it locally, it'll just automatically give you the version of PHP that is being required or requested by that folder. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's
Here's
handy.
some of the other highlighted features. Go ahead.
The other thing that the other thing that I found in it that I like, our main work app is we've got like, for whatever reason, when the repo was created, everything was moved up a directory. So like all of the application is not in the Git root. There's like another folder that sits in the top. So Valet doesn't by default know to look in that directory and then for Laravel. But what PHP Monitor allows you to do is to target a directory inside like a specific directory. So it'll just do the linking,
Nice.
but then you can specify a URL for it as well. So doing manual linking kind of thing. But where I find that particularly useful is that I'm using Git work trees for my thing. So rather than just switching between branches, I can have multiple branches checked out at once, and I can just jump between directories.
Oh, interesting. Nice.
That does that. So it allows me to more easily review
Didn't know that was
code
a
and
thing.
compare it against master, and without having to like stash things and switch branches and then
Sure.
forget that I've stashed code and then be going, where is my code gone that I'm sure I wrote, kind of thing. So it allows me to, within each of those subdirectories of the Git work tree, to point to specific things and say like, this is a checkout, so that I can get Valet pointing to directories within directories within directories, but keeping everything in one like top level directory. So that's really handy as well, which of course you can do using Valet, but it's nice to be able to just point it at a directory directly from the Finder window, which is nice.
That is awesome. Yeah, that is really cool. There's a ton of new features in here. So you've got, I think one of the main big things is this domains window. So it'll show you all the different sites that you have that are able to be hosted with your version or with your Valet here. So you can link a folder in Valet. So there's like park and there's link, right? When you're using Valet, you can park an entire directory, which just says any subdirectories of this directory will be hosted automatically through Valet. Or you can do or maybe it's the opposite. I can't remember. If it's link is that, and then park is a single domain or single folder, I can't remember. Any case, you can do that from his domains window here. Site list performance improvements, faster and improved site search. The site list will show you what project type it is hosting it as, whether it be Laravel or WordPress or whatever. It looks at the composer.json and tries to determine what type of project it is. You can have brew service statuses in the drop-down menu, so PHP, Nginx, DNS mask, etc. You can see the status of those in the drop-down menu. You can see a PHP version requirement in the site list, compatibility status per site. You can change PHP versions from the compatibility status on the site's list. You can automatically update PHP INI. I'm really excited about this one. Alfred integration, which I love me some Alfred. So the fact that we'll have an Alfred plugin will be pretty cool. There's also a one-time message to sponsor Nico. And so if you click on that, it's only going to come up the first time. If you click on it, he says, basically, I would charge about $20 for this. So that would be awesome if you could, sponsor me. So for those of us who are able to do so and who enjoy using the tool, highly would highly suggest that. Definitely a good idea there. Okay, so you've got all sorts of that amazingness. It is free to use. It is the release now, not the beta anymore. It is actually the 5.0 release. So go download that, sponsor Nico, and make sure to say thanks as well.
And there's a few different options as well in terms of sponsorship. You can make a one-off donation via Stripe or PayPal, or you can use GitHub sponsors, and there's a $5 and a $10 a month tier there. So definitely check that out. This is a super useful utility, and I am right now, as we speak, live on the air, sending my €20 donation to Nico, because this is a very useful tool that's going to save a bunch of time.
Absolutely.
And it's just super convenient,
Yep.
especially being able to switch PHP versions like that. So check that out. Thanks, Nico. Next up, we're into the packages now. We're into the packages, and we would be remiss to mention packages without mentioning Yet another package from our friends at Sparsy. Laravel Slack Alerts is a package to send a message to Slack quickly, where you can set up a Slack notification channel in Laravel's robust notification system. Sometimes all you need is a simple way to trigger a message in various Slack channels. This comes with a very simple API. You go Slack alert, : message, and then pass it your message, and that is it. The above message is sent via a configurable job, and you can also configure multiple Slack webhook URLs to which you can send messages. Messages can also contain Markdown and Slack emoji. If you'd like to learn more about the background behind this package, read a package to send Slack alerts in a Laravel app quickly article by Freek van der Herten. To get started with this package, check out the README and the source code on GitHub. So this is nice and easy if you want to just specify a bunch of URLs, webhook URLs to send messages into the channel. Maybe when you get a new payment, maybe when you get when someone leaves or someone is flagged their intent to cancel or whatever, you can go and chase those kinds of things up if you wish. Slack is a nice place to just funnel all of that noise.
Indeed. Very nice. Okay, we've got another package here called Eloquent Inspector for Laravel. So Andrea Marco Sartori created this to inspect models and collect properties, relationships, and more. So what this does is it provides helpful information about the use statements of a model, model properties, and model relationships. So the way that you use this is you say inspector : inspect, then you pass in a class, not like an instantiated new object, but just the class. So user : class. And then you can say get use statements. And when you do that, I'm assuming it uses reflection behind the scenes or just inspects that class in order to tell you what use statements it has on it. So it'll say it's using model, and it's also using or extending whatever other classes you might be using inside of that model there. You can say inspector inspect that same class, and then say get properties. It will spit out a list of all the properties that are on that model, and then you can say you can even specify drill down further. Like you can say properties ID name. Say ID, properties ID type. It'll tell you it's an integer. Properties ID DB type. You can ask if it's nullable, or you can ask if it has a default value in the database, or even in the model itself. You can look at relationships. So again, I'm not exactly sure when you would use this, but if you needed to be able to inspect models instead of having to kind of dig around inside the model itself and try and figure out how you could get these out in a nice, neat way. This allows you to do this quite simply, and it looks like it's got a great API as well. Eloquent Inspector by Andrea Marco Sartori. Yeah, nice job.
Very interesting. I wonder what the use case for that would be, because there's not, like, it tells you that you can inspect your models to collect properties and relationships, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
Marco, if you're listening to this, Andrea, if you're listening to this, it would be good if you put in your README some use cases for when and why you might want to do this. And we'll talk about this again next time.
I can think of like some things where, like if I had
I see it useful in the context
child
of, like,
models
ID
or something, and I wanted to see. Sure, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's interesting. Maybe something like that. Mm-hmm. Or if you wanted to be able to see if a model had a particular type of use statement on it. But I suppose there are other ways to do that as well. No, you're right. I mean, like, what would be a good use case for this? I'm interested. He's obviously got a specific one in mind.
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing more about the why, whether the blog post was something in the README or a link from the README to a blog post.
Absolutely.
I'm intrigued.
Ooh, you get to talk about this next one.
Next one, yeah, this is weird, but I saw you were all about this. The Taowin CSS Laravel package from Toby Macias wraps up the standalone CLI version of Taowin CSS framework for Laravel applications. If you're not familiar with the purpose of the Taowin CSS standalone CLI, the announcement about it explains it thusly. Taowin CSS is written in JavaScript and distributed as an NPM package, which means you've always had to have Node and NPM installed to use it. This has made it harder to integrate into projects when using NPM isn't always common, and with tools like Rails and Phoenix both moving away from NPM by default, we needed to find a way for people to use Taowin in these projects without forcing them to adopt an entirely separate ecosystem of tooling. Today, we're announcing a new standalone CLI build that gives you the full power of Taowin CLI in a self-contained executable with no Node or NPM required. So this is from the Taowin team saying that they released the Taowin CLI, which is a standalone binary that you can use. So this package from Tony provides convenient commands such as installing, scaffolding, building, and minifying Taowin builds via the standalone CLI. So you've got artisan commands to do all of this. You've got Taowin CSS :download, :install, :build, and :watch. The package also comes with a Taowin CSS helper function to render the compiled assets instead of using mix for Node.js environments. So this is particularly useful if you're building a Laravel application and you've not got any JavaScript dependencies, you're not using Vue or React, you don't have anything, and really the only reason that you have npm at all is to do that one-time compilation of your Taowin stuff, then perhaps this is something that you can check out. You keep everything in PHP land. It wraps everything up for you around that Taowin bundle or the CLI, and it allows you to run just artisan commands to do the watching and building and whatever. And so you can swap that out and keep your build small. It means you don't have to install npm in your production environments. You don't need the weight of npm inside of your build step and things like that. If you've ever used the Taowin CLI, it is very quick. And I know that the team put a lot of effort into making it quick and seamless for everyone. So definitely check that out. If there is no other reason that you've got npm in your projects other than to build your Taowin CSS, then definitely check this one out. I said it was weird at the start, but now that I've had a close look at it, this is wonderful. And because I don't do much JavaScript in at least my side projects, this is definitely worth a look if you're using Tailwind.
It is indeed. And so Tony is on this, he's got a hey.com blog that he's got his own personal blog, but then he's got a hey.com blog that he has out there, which the name of the blog post is Front End Without Node, NPM, or Webpack in Laravel. And so he talks about following the Rails Phoenix moves to simplify the development workflows, exactly kind of like how you described. Mm-hmm. But then he talks about how they're using import map instead of NPM or Webpack or anything like that to create a bundle. You don't have to do that anymore. And with using HTTP2 now, you don't incur the penalty that you used to when you had to make a bunch of requests. So essentially the idea is that you just use like a CDN, and it just grabs all of those different things and just pulls them all in at runtime rather than having to compile them all into one big bundle. And he even talks about the ability to pull them all in locally and say put them on there, but then you still don't have a bundle that you have to do. So you just ship it all up with your code. And then you don't incur that handshake penalty, the HTTPS handshake penalty with a bunch of different CDNs. So there's some really cool stuff going on here. And I would be overjoyed to not have to have a build step anymore. I mean, how sweet would that be?
Yeah.
That'd be super nice. And I don't think that's maybe not like a build step, but not a bundle step. You don't have a bundle step. So anyway, sorry, last thing. He also talks a little bit about how with Vue and with React, you have JSX. And so it kind of requires that build step, but apparently there is another, which if you don't use JSX or SFC, then you can, if you're just using render functions, I guess, without using JSX, then you can still do it with this import map thing.
Nice.
Anyway, I digress. It's a really cool and interesting concept. I had never heard about it until last week. So really, really cool stuff. Hey, also, speaking of really, really cool stuff, we wanted to take a minute to talk about Hook Relay. So let's say you want to add webhooks to your app, and after having worked with the webhooks that Stripe provides, you want yours to be just as great as theirs. Well, there's more than just sending a JSON payload to your customer's URL and calling it a day, right? The really good news is that Hook Relay has already done all the hard work for you. Hook Relay will show you what was sent in a webhook. It supports inbound and outbound webhooks, full duplex. You can add background jobs so you don't hold up your web requests. You can do webhook retries, deliveries with backoffs up to days later to work around errors without overwhelming the receiving server. It records deliveries, and it is amazing at providing visibility for the webhooks that you've sent. So without Hook Relay, you have no idea how many requests you've sent, how many you've processed, and with Hook Relay, you can watch your traffic, inspect each request. It's like X-ray vision. So you can skip days of grunt work rolling your own webhook system and get reliable webhooks for your app in minutes, not days. Go to hookrelay.dev to get started and check webhooks off your to-do list. Thanks so much, for sponsoring the show, Honey Badger and Hook Relay. Okie dokie. Back at it, my friend.
Perfection. Next up, improve debugging output with a Laravel dumper. The Laravel dumper package improves on the default dumper with useful Laravel-specific enhancements. Now, this is particularly useful in the CLI. So instead of getting, if you've ever done a dump or a DD in your tests or in a tinker command or whatever, all you get is just like a wall, like a screen, a scrolling screen of
Indeed.
JSON of your, JSON output, your array output. So what this package does is it will give you, like in the browser, you've got the ability to click to expand each of the objects in the array or the nested object. You get the same thing in the terminal. So you can get a nice collapsed readable output. You get helpful information for various core Laravel objects such as models, query builder, instances, the service container, database connections, carbon instances, requests, and responses. Those last two especially. If you are inside of a test and you're doing a HTTP test, a browser, this get or whatever, and then you tap the response and you dump the response, and then you get the entire app container in that response, and you've got to scroll forever just to get to the top of it. This is particularly useful because it's going to collapse all of that into nice, clickable little arrows to split things up. So you can expect enhanced output automatically wherever you typically use DD, and given the experience with chaining DD calls onto the query builder, for example. So if you have like post query, select title, where ID, and then you chain DD onto the end of that, you'll get the output of the query, and then you'll also get all of the bound values come back in a separate array. If you still want to access the original default dump or DD behavior, you can use helpful commands that are included, ddf and dumpf for full. If you'd like to learn more about the difference between the default experience and the enhancements made by the dumper package, check out the Laravel dumper diffs on GitHub, and you can learn more about this package and get full installation instructions and view the source code on GitHub, all of which will be linked in the show notes. And well done to Chris for putting this all together.
Very nice. We've also got a quick article here by everyone's favorite human, Mr. Paul Redmond. And I don't think Paul gets enough credit. We haven't talked about him for a while. So quick shout out to Paul Redmond. If you don't know who Paul is, Paul writes so much of the content on Laravel News here and is just a general all-around rock star of a dude. So if you don't follow him or you haven't said thanks to Paul, please reach out and say hey to him and tell him he's awesome. Paul, thanks so much, man, for all you do. We've got a complete web scraping toolkit for PHP called Roach PHP. And not only does it handle the crawling of web content, but it also provides an entire pipeline to process that scraped data, making it an all-in-one resource for scraping web pages with PHP. So here's some of the main features among many other awesome web scraping features. There are spiders, which are classes designed to crawl web pages. You can have data pipelines that will then take that data and process and collect it. You can extract data really easily from HTML and XML documents. There's also this idea of an interactive shell. If you've ever tried to do this sort of like web scraping, you know that it's sort of like a guess and check game where you're trying to extract particular pieces. And so you can open a REPL with a given URL, just PHP artisan roach : shell and then the URL. And then you can just sort of start digging around and figuring out kind of what you need to do to extract a particular piece. So you can find it and then you can say, oh, that's the spot I need. Let me figure out what I need to do to get that piece. And then you can write that into one of your spider classes and make sure that it will target the data that you're looking for. You can write extensions to hook into the Roach PHP features or to extend those Roach PHP features. And it also has a built-in logging extension. It is a framework agnostic library, but it does integrate really nicely with Laravel, as there is a first-party Roach PHP Laravel package, so you can get started really, really quickly. The Laravel package defines convenient services for Roach PHP and CLI commands to create spiders and run that interactive shell that we just talked about a minute ago. So if you ever need to scrape pages with Roach, if you ever would like to scrape pages with PHP, this is a great way to get started. I am definitely going to be taking a look at this one. There's been a couple things recently that I've wanted to do with this. Even like if I want, like, okay, so if my electric bill goes down in the winter and up in the summer, and my gas bill does the opposite, and I've thought a couple times it would be cool if I could just have it go scrape and just tell me kind of how it's going for the month based on like gas usage and stuff. Thought that'd be kind of interesting. But again, I don't want to go in. It's not worth it to. It's just to know. It's not because it matters, but it's just kind of be interesting to look at that and be like, I guess Laura's been cranking the heat to 82 this winter. I don't know, whatever it is. So
Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. This is a really, really interesting package. I've heard about this a couple times. I think Marcel was talking about it not too long ago. So I definitely want to check this one out.
Absolutely. On to a couple of tutorials now. The first one is from, I had his name, Anton Rum. He's a 19-year-old self-taught full-stack web developer from Germany. So congratulations, Anton, for publishing an article. I think this is your first article even on Laravel News. So this tutorial goes through how you can automate the deployment of your PHP codebase with the help of GitHub Actions and Ansible. Talks through everything you need to do to prepare, to set up the inventory, to create your playbook, and to set up the GitHub Actions to make the deployment possible. So I won't go into it because it's quite code heavy, and it's showing you all the different things that you need to do so that there is some expectation that you have an understanding of how Ansible works, but there is some nice copy-paste examples that you can check out as well. So definitely have a look at that one. Thanks, Anton, for your contribution.
Very nice. Hey, tell me if this sounds familiar. I recently made a mistake where a staging environment emailed out a few thousand people. Does that sound like anything you've ever done, Michael?
Not anything I've done recently, but certainly something that I'm sure we've all done in the past in
all of
one
us.
way or another.
Yeah, I remember one time when I was first getting started with Stripe, and I was like, okay, I want to test this, and I'm just going to test it, and I forgot to change out my production credentials with like the test credentials, and I'm running tests, and I'm like, why is this test not passing? So I ran it a ton of times, and I found out I had been charging this donor that was a real donor in the real database, like, I'd hit him up for $50 like 100 times. So it was like $5,000 charged this dude up. Thankfully, he was really understanding, but it happens, right?
Yeah.
This is a common enough story. So Chris Fidao took the time to write up a quick article on how you can hopefully prevent this. And the article is called Safer Staging Environments with Black Hole Storage. So he relates this story where he emailed out a bunch of people. And he says there's a lot of ways to safeguard against this, but this trick is one that I don't commonly see used. So in their case, they have a database table that has a list of people to email, which email to send them, and when to send it. So this it's sort of like a drip campaign list, if you will, right? Here's the next email that's going to go out to them. Here's when you need to send it. Here's the email address to send it to. So cron task in their situation checks this table periodically. So, excuse me. One way to safeguard against this in their case would be if that table never had any data in it. So in MySQL, we're mostly using the InnoDB storage engines, or MyISAM for older databases. MySQL has other storage engines, and one of those is the black hole engine. So as MySQL describes it, the black hole storage engine acts as a black hole that accepts data but throws it away and doesn't store it. Retrievals always return an empty result. So this is really perfect. I've never heard of this. But everything in our application can work normally in staging, but this table will just never have any data within it, right? So he talks about how to alter a MySQL table. The only step I had to take was altering a table, and he ran into an error here where MySQL did not like that there was a default value of 0000:00 whatever for a timestamp field. So to get around that, you had to adjust the SQL mode for the database's connection session, and here's the commands he ran to do it. But then that's it. The table will exist, be queryable, but will never retain data. Wow. That is really freaking cool. Never have heard about this. That's pretty awesome, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Unless you have those scenarios where you actually want to test that something goes into that database, so you obviously have to be mindful.
So yeah. So it sounds like he says it's queryable, but it doesn't retain data. So he says everything in our application can work normally in staging, but this table will just never have data within it. So how does it work perfectly in staging if it doesn't have data? I don't know how that works.
I mean, I suppose in staging, you never want to be able to send the email at all. So it's something that you would have to consider how you want to do it. Obviously, your tests will probably want to insert and fetch data from there and things like that. But in your staging environment, if you want it to be, production-like without the risk of ever having to, send out emails to people incorrectly, then the black hole approach is one that you can consider.
I'm sorry. And it looks too like you could just do it for that particular table, not for, you don't have to, right. You don't have to do it for the whole database.
Yeah. The engine,
right. Yeah.
is like you can set a default, but the engine is per table.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, this makes more sense then.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, ensure the table has no data. So truncate offending worrisome table, and then he alters the offending worrisome table to use an engine of black hole. I get it now. That makes sense.
So you do it as part of your like deploy step. Whenever you're deploying to staging, you could do an environment check and say, okay, we're in staging, so we need to run, MySQL -e alter table, offending worrisome table, engine equals black hole, and however many different tables that happens to be, and you can just get that all done as part of the deployment process to your
That's pretty slick.
Staging environments.
That is pretty
Chris
slick.
Is always,
very nice.
Chris has encountered all of the problems, and he's always got
always
lovely solutions.
Yes, he has. Yep. That is pretty interesting, though. What a great idea. Black hole engine. Well, that's it. Hey, man, that's all we got for today. You got anything else we need to talk about here?
I got nothing. I got to figure out why my camera's on a slant, but other than that, I got nothing.
It looks good. I think it looks good. Maybe your room's on a slant.
Maybe it is.
You are upside down after all.
It's possible that
you're
I'm
under the
upside
equator
down on a slight angle.
Indeed, in fact, you are.
Mm-hmm.
And also, your toilets, when you flush them, go the opposite way.
The opposite way. They come.
I don't know if that's true or not. I think we've discussed. I think you said that last time, and I laughed at it last time too. No, it's like clockwise or counterclockwise, right? Like, I gotta know if that's actually true. We're gonna have to test this.
I think we'll have to do it.
I've tried to get you to test it before. After we're off the air, I want you to go. Yep.
We'll both
video and send it on Telegram. Okay. All right. Sounds good.
All right.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. This was episode 160 of the Laravel News Podcast. You can find show notes for this episode at podcast.laravel-news.com/160. If you liked the show, we would really appreciate it if you'd rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars is much appreciated. Reach out to us on Twitter at Jacob Bennett or at Michael Dorinda or at Laravel News if you have any questions. Thanks again to Honey Badger for sponsoring the show with their amazing new product, Hook Relay. All right, folks. Until we see you next time, keep those toilets flushing in the right direction. Peace out.
Bye.
Bye.